Welcome to Nicole's Tips. In this installment, we'll look at Pincha Mayurasana or forearm stand. My 3 tips for Pincha Mayurasana are: keep your elbows shoulder-width distance apart, knit your rib cage in, and lengthen your tailbone towards your heels and hug your legs together. So this helps to organize the arms, the upper limbs. This helps to contain and organize the torso, the middle part, middle region. And this also helps to contain your lower limbs. Welcome to Nicole's Tips. In this installment, we'll look at Pincha Mayurasana or forearm stand. My 3 tips for Pincha Mayurasana are: keep your elbows shoulder-width distance apart, knit your rib cage in, and lengthen your tailbone towards your heels and hug your legs together. So let's unpack this together. This helps to contain and organize the arms, which is your foundation in this pose, the torso, and your legs, which is going to be the highest point in this particular pose. So I tend to like to use a block between my hands for forearm stand. You can choose not to. There are a few different versions of how you can place your arms here. There's even a version where you bring your hands all the way together and interlace your fingers. Any of these are okay. The most important thing that you want to keep in mind is my first tip, is keep your elbows shoulder width distance apart. Once the elbows splay wide, then everything else starts to fall apart. So we want to make sure that the elbows are staying shoulder width distance. So come to hands and knees. And just start by lowering your forearms down onto your mat. And make sure, kind of do an eyeball check to make sure that your elbows are shoulder width distance apart, that they're directly underneath your shoulders. And then you can choose what you want to do with the rest of your arms. So as long as the elbows are shoulder width, you could interlace your fingers, press down through the pinky edge of your hands. That's one variation. You could also take a block between your hands and just with your palms facing the outer edge of the block, just like you see me doing here. My preference is to have the palms facing the floor. This way your palms and your fingers can help with the balance a little bit. And I take the index finger and the thumb around the edge of the block, just so you can see this. Come a little closer. So the index finger and the thumb create an L shape that comes around the bottom edge of the block. And then still keeping the elbows shoulder width distance apart. Lastly, if it's not difficult for you to keep the hands further apart in this way, you can just simply do it without a block with your palms facing the floor. Okay, so I'm going to grab a block and set up this way. Okay, pro tip for keeping the elbows shoulder width and so that they don't slide is that we tend to have some grippiness on a lot of the yoga mats that we'll use. So if you do have a yoga mat that's kind of grippy, we can use that. You'll bring your elbows in a little bit more narrow than shoulder width. Catch the skin on your sticky mat and drag your arms out. You should see a little bit of movement happening. That's really just the skin kind of sliding along the forearm in order to kind of lock it into place. All right, so there's your foundation set up. Next piece here, and we'll explore this in dolphin pose, which is the prep for kicking up into Pincha Mayurasana. We want to knit the ribcage in. So even here where you are, think about like the shape that your back naturally wants to go into. Wants to go into a back bend. As you'll see in my torso, my ribcage is kind of dumping down toward the floor. So you want to think of knitting in and up and filling the back side of your body. And let's do that again. So let it dump down. Relax your belly. Let your ribcage just dump down toward the floor. And then do the opposite, knit in and up. Okay, now keep that knitting in and up. Curl your toes under, lift your knees up, and walk your feet in. And press down into the floor with your forearms, lifting your head up high. And then again, knit your rib cage in. Try to fill the backside of your body as much as you can, and look towards your toes for now. Okay, walk your feet back out, lower your knees down, and sit up. Whew, take a little break, maybe even shake out your arms a little bit. So this next piece becomes a little bit more complicated once you start to turn yourself upside down. So for a moment, stand up. It's easy to find, well, easier to find neutral pelvis and the hugging in through the legs in a standing position from Tadasana. So we'll find it here. Neutral pelvis means that we're kind of coming away from the natural tendency, which is a little bit of anterior tilt in the pelvis, which is what I'm exaggerating right now. So to find neutral pelvis in the standing position, you'll think of lengthening the tailbone down toward the heels and zipping from your pubic bones to your belly button. Once you are turned upside down, that's going to change. It's going to feel like you're lengthening your tailbone up just because of the orientation of your body. But it's the same action. Now, keep this neutral pelvis action, lengthening your tailbone down toward your heels here, zipping from pubic bones to belly button, and just notice the muscular engagement you feel. I immediately feel my gluteal muscles, my buttocks engaged, and I feel a lot of engagement in the lower abdominal region here. So even if you forget the direction of how you're supposed to move your pelvis once you turn upside down, you should just know that you need to be feeling engagement in your lower abdomen and some engagement in your glutes, and that should take care of it too. So that's step one, find neutral pelvis. In tip 3, there's a second piece. Once you kick up, you'll find neutral pelvis, and you'll also hug your legs all the way together. This makes for a really strong and light upper part of your body in this shape. So do find neutral pelvis, okay, with your feet hip-width distance apart. Just feel the strength there. Then bring your feet and legs all the way together. Make sure you still have neutral pelvis, and hug your legs, your inner thighs in toward one another. This makes for a lot of strength when you turn yourself upside down. Okay, let's give this last piece a try. Come to hands and knees. Lower your forearms down. Make sure that your elbows are shoulder width distance apart. You might come in a little bit further. Catch the skin on your sticky mat and drag out. Then knit your rib cage in. Keep knitting the rib cage in as you curl your toes under, lift up into dolphin pose and walk in. Now before you come up into forearm stand, look down between your forearms. And you don't have to come all the way up into this. In fact, you might, I'm going to come down for just a second. This can also be done all the way up to the wall. So for example, I have this block here. If I was using a block and the wall space, this edge of the block would touch the wall. I'm going to do it without a wall today, but you may want to kick up to the wall, which is very skillful. Okay, with that said, you can come into dolphin pose and just focus on lifting one leg. You can kick up to the wall. Or if you're very, very confident in this pose, you can try coming up in the center of the room. Okay, let's proceed again. Forearms down, elbows shoulder width distance apart. Knit your rib cage in. Keep it knitting in as you lift up into dolphin pose. Walk in. Keep knitting in through your rib cage, then look down between your forearms. Again, pressing down through your forearms. Lift one leg up, and then maybe a tiny hop to lift up. Get the second leg up. Once both legs are up, here's where you start to organize. Lengthening the tailbone toward the heels, knitting the rib cage in, hugging the legs together. And trying to straighten out as much as you can, right? But you'll see I'm still in a little back bend here. Okay, I'm coming down when you're ready. Whew. All right, so those are my 3 tips for Pincha Mayurasana forearm stand, and I hope they help.